questions you may be asking at this point. The first is that if Britain's top single stars aren't dominating the Billboard Top 40, then who is? And the answer is, there's nobody. There's only one person whose last 4 records have made the top 10, and I'm going to let you guess for about 5 minutes who that person is. With literally thousands of medium wave stations across America where they're called AM stations, hundreds of singles are played every week. That's many times the number of 45s that get aired in Britain. It means that hundreds of artists have a far better chance of having a hit in America than they have here, and that established artists have reduced chances of rising to the top with every go. If you can hit the American top 10 2 times out of 3, then you're performing a feat that these days only the likes of Elton John, Paul Simon, and Stevie Wonder can manage. So from here, it's easy to make the transition to that second big question I brought up. If no person is dominating the American singles chart, what type of record is? And why aren't these records making it in Britain? Once again, the answer may be disappointing. There's no current trend in single success. Glam rock, punk rock, teeny boppers, they aren't doing well. But there is one class of records that can be identified that rise to number 1 in America and do nothing here. These are songs of theme with distinctly American subject matter. And one of these was a hit earlier this year from Helen Reddy. It's a woman's liberation anthem called I Am Woman. So now, Michael, it's time to let you in on just who it is who's the only person who's had 4 straight top 10 hits in America. And as a matter of fact, he's had 7 straight top 10 records. Did you guess Lou Reed? Naughty, you're wrong. It's Al Green. Al Green, who said to me over lunch when I said, you know, the song titles you have released to tell a story. He said, yes, that's right. I can't get next to you. I'm tired of being alone, so let's stay together. And then he just went through the whole list. It was fabulous, fabulous. Bob, I have to say, the voice has dropped a bit since then, hasn't it?
It does with all of us, though, really, doesn't it, Paul? I listened to the early broadcasts that I did, and I'm definitely about 3 registers higher than I am now.
I mentioned that when I first deputized for John Peel, that I chose as my first session artist Joan Armatrading, who was here. Joan, do you recall your first BBC radio session?
I'm supposed to say yes.
But you're allowed to say no.
I'm going to say no. Because I think, and you can certainly verify this, when I started, I was so shy. I think that all my energies went into playing, so I wasn't really taking much notice of what else was around me. I was too shy. When I think about it, how on earth did I manage to succeed with that shyness?
It's true. I first met Joan at a Joni Mitchell concert. And you all know that there's a lot of show business air kissing and hugging that goes on when people meet. And Joan treated people as if they had the plague. She just didn't want to be touched, kissed, hugged, anything. And finally, over time, you mellowed a bit.
Yeah. Now I air kiss.
And it's due to Elton that I got onto Radio 1. I don't even know if you remember this. Okay, here it is. Here comes the story. We were both at a Bee Gees concert at the Royal Festival Hall. I thought to myself, the whole of the Western world, including Bob Harris, is going wild about Stevie Wonder and his transition to adulthood with this great series of solo albums. But under the radar, Elton John has become the best-selling male artist in the United States. And I thought, it's time to do a cover story on Elton for Rolling Stone. So, during the interval, I followed Elton into the loo. Him, and this is without shame, the kind of thing that only someone who was still at university would do. Do you think it's time for the Rolling Stone interview with Elton John? He said, Helen Walters at DJM takes care of things like that. Call her. Now, years later, I realized what a polite man he was. Most people would just say, get lost. But I called Helen Walters, who was his publicist at TJM, and she thought it was a great idea. And so we had a very nice day at your place in Virginia Water with Bernie. But at one point, you sent Bernie out to get fish and chips in the village because you thought that you would be recognized, but he wouldn't. So he could go out safely. And this began this most wonderful friendship, an inspirational friendship for me. And Helen Walters took me out to lunch to thank me and brought along her husband, who was John. And he said, I'm starting a rock magazine program in London. I'd like a 10-minute American Looks at the Scene every week. Would you like to do it? And that's how I got into it in 1973. So Elton...
By cottaging.
I have put a plaque up in the Royal Festival. Elton and I am leaving this subject behind, have done so many interviews together, we should have our own DVD box set at this point. But the one that meant the most to me in the 1970s was a perfect example of the freedom we had in broadcasting those days. Because one day, I just walked up one flight of stairs in Egton House, Radio 1, to the office of Teddy Warwick, executive producer, and I said, do you think it's time for the Elton John story? There had been a Beatles story and a Rolling Stone story, and he said yes. And he gave me a tape recorder, and I went across the United States, and I was just allowed to do the job. I interviewed 35 people, and we had the 5-hour series of the Elton John story. And Elton, I'm going to subject you to hearing your voice as it was in
First the toilet and now this.
And here we are, back in 1975.
The keyboard antics of Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard made Reg Dwight think he never wanted to do anything else. But pounding a piano does not guarantee a glamorous life, as the teenage Reg learned playing with the group Bluesology.
We used to play little youth clubs around the Pinner area and Northwood and Ricewood. I never used to sing. We used to have a singer called Stuart Brown, who was with the group more or less until it folded. The first person I ever backed was Major Lance, and I thought that was the big life. And we used to literally get 15 quid a week for hurtling up the countryside and playing sometimes 2 or 3 gigs a night, which you tell the bands nowadays that and they never believe you. Billy Stewart and Patti LaBelle were by far the best people as far as professionalism goes, and the people that I really enjoyed backing most were Patti LaBelle and the Bells were, if I may say it, pals to work with, because they were so, ladies tend to be sort of more temperamental, especially when you got 4 of them moving around the stage. It was very hard, especially playing Danny Boy in D-flat.
Patti LaBelle also has memories of those frantic years.
He wasn't fat, he was just chubby. And he was shy. He kept his chit-chat to himself, except for when we played cards and I would win all of his money. And he would be hungry and then have to cook for him and feed him. Because I used to beat all the guys out of their money. And I felt really guilty afterwards. And I said, oh, these guys might not have any money to eat. So we had a flat in London at the time. So I would invite him over every Sunday for dinner or something. That way my conscience didn't bother me so much.